Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe they can always have what they want when they want because they're special. And in today's episode, it's all about entitled siblings. So if you have an entitled sibling, this one's for you. The stories are wild. I hope you enjoy the lineup today. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This story involves me, a 43-year-old female, my entitled stepmom, and my half-brother, who's 27 years old. Here's the background. So my half-brother is a drug addict, and he's stolen from pretty much everyone in the family. Since my brother can't hold down a job, I paid for a cell phone, so we have a way to contact him. Otherwise, he would disappear and nobody would hear from him for months at a time. One day, he asked me if I could add his girlfriend to my plan. I said fine, but they need to buy their own phones. I started the process, and they were supposed to buy the phones and have them activated. I get a call from my brother saying they can't activate the phone. I tell him to have the store call me. He said they can't, so I called my provider, and they said he shouldn't have a problem activating. I call him back and tell him that, and this goes on for 2 full days. He keeps trying to get me to add him as an authorized user. He must have called me dozens of times. I finally got sick of the calls, and I called my phone company, and I said to add him as an authorized user, only to activate the phone, and then to immediately remove him. I specifically said that he's not allowed to make any purchases. The person I talked to assured me this would be done. Well, a few weeks later, I look at my phone bill. They charged 2 brand new iPhones, extra chargers, charging pads, cases, screen protectors, phone mounts, all on my bill. So I called the phone company and they said he was added, so there's nothing they can do. It's at this point I call my brother and he just laughs at me. I told him to take all that crap back right away. He said no, and that's when we argued and he gets pissed off and he says, now I'm not paying it back at all and I hope it tanks your credit. I tell him to go F himself and hang up the phone. 5 minutes later, my stepmom calls me up and she says that I need to apologize to my brother for what I said. I laughed and I said I'll apologize when he takes the phone back. That's when she said he's not going to take back any of that stuff. And in fact, he deserves it because of what I said. That I'm a horrible sister, yada yada yada. She called me every name in the book. I then told her that I'd be pressing charges for fraud, and she can go F herself too. I called my phone company and I raised hell. Luckily they took notes and somebody saw the part about no purchases, so they reversed the charges for that. They immediately disconnected the lines and flagged the phones as stolen, so they can't be used. My dad approached me about what I said, but surprisingly, he wasn't mad. He said that he didn't approve of the language, but he approved of the message. Honestly, sometimes you just gotta say it how it is, right? Especially when you're dealing with an entitled person like that. Like that woman basically said, you deserve to be robbed and have your credit ruined by talking to him like that. And at that, I'd say she deserves to have a few F-bombs thrown at her. But yeah, that aside, good on Dad for seeing some sense here, and clearly Opie's half-sibling is being enabled hard by Mom. Thank goodness they reversed those charges and flagged those phones, because people like Opie's brother deserve absolutely nothing. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 2010 and I just turned 18, and I spent a long summer week away from home, enjoying my new freedom to come and go from my parents' house as I pleased. During the week, I crashed at friends' houses, went camping with other friends, played video games, and lit all the cigarettes and tobacco products that me and my friends could afford. My drug-addicted brother, who's 27 years old, who I'll refer to as Mac, thought he was going to make it big in the music scene because of all the different drugs he was willing to do. He thought that being on acid made him play as well as Jimi Hendrix because Hendrix did acid. Now this is relevant because during one of his many drug-induced rampages, Mac was convinced that his USB microphone was in my room. So Mac convinces my dad that he was recording in my room and he left it in there. It was never there, and he was never there. My dad was so wrapped around Mac's manipulative finger that he never questioned anything he did. So with that, Mac goes into my room and he tosses the place upside down, like something out of a movie scene during one of his notorious benders. He flips the mattress, empties out every dresser drawer onto the floor, pulls all of my clothes out of my closet. Nothing was left the way I left it. After all was said and done, I had to spend 3 days cleaning and reorganizing my room because of how badly this idiot destroyed everything of mine. Things were broken, clothes were everywhere, bins and boxes dumped on the floor. It was like a tornado had rampaged through a trailer park in Iowa. My dad had heard all this going on and he did nothing. Of course, I showed my dad the mess. Dad just shrugs at me and says, "He's in his 20s, what do you expect me to do?" I respond, "How about you effing stop his strung out ass from tossing the place upside down? How about at least calling him to have him clean up his mess?" I replied. Dad just practically ignores me before walking off and saying, "Your brother was looking for his microphone and you just need to deal with it." Now, going to my mom was no different. My mom was so terrorized by him that she wanted no part of anything involving him because she felt unsafe. I can't blame her though. He becomes really aggressive when challenged on anything he did wrong. So realizing that nothing was going to be done by my parents, and this was no matter to call the police over since Dad let him in the house, I did exactly what Dad said and dealt with it. I tried to be diplomatic at first, and I asked him to come clean up my room. At that, he laughs, makes fun of me, and then he says I just needed my microphone. I asked if he found it, and I know he didn't because I knew where it was. It was over in my dad's garage. So I scoop up the microphone to hide it even better. I stuff it into the rafters of an old shed on the outskirts of the property, inside of a large PVC pipe stacked up with other pipes. I then gave Mac one final warning. I texted him to clean it up or else. He again made fun of me saying, "You're such a crybaby. How difficult is it to clean your own room? You're just a lazy princess." So this is where I get back at him. I leave my parents' house to sit around a campfire at a friend's house. I lit my first cigarette of the night, and I promised myself that nothing would stop my ensuing plan until I smoked the whole pack. You see, at the time, I had recently learned how to SMS bomb. Back then, you could add the same contact into your SMS app multiple times for a group chat. I believe it was up to 30 on the phone I had. For every one SMS message I sent him, he received 30 in total. I spent hours sending messages to my brother. I spent from 9 p.m. until 4 a.m. sending Mac thousands upon thousands of text and picture messages. I've now dropped a bomb on the fancy BlackBerry that he was so proud of buying a week or two before this. And for anyone wondering, it was simply a copy and pasted text that read, "This stops when my room is clean," and then a picture of the mess he had made. I alternated back and forth. This took very little effort, and it left him inundated with notifications every 1 to 3 seconds. This effectively DDoSed his phone into oblivion. It was locked up tighter than a New York subway car. He couldn't text, call, or even open anything on his phone other than my text messages. That's when Dad starts frantically calling me around 1 a.m. I ignore it, and that's when my mom calls me and she leaves a voicemail for me to call him. Worried that it's an emergency, I call Dad back. Dad picks up the phone screaming at me saying, "His phone is locked up and he can't use it. You need to stop this right effing now." That's when I reply, "He needs to go clean up the mess he made of my room right effing now, or deal with it like I have to." The argument continues for a while longer, and the entire time, he's defending my brother tooth and nail. Eventually, I broke it to my dad that there was nothing I could do to stop the flow of messages and notifications. He hung up the phone, and he never brought it up again. After the smoke had cleared, pun intended, I find out that my brother Mac had his BlackBerry locked up for 10 days. He wasn't able to respond to a job offer, and he wasn't smart enough to leave an alternate contact. The job went to someone else by the time Mac was able to return the call. His phone plan also had a monthly SMS and data limit that I absolutely destroyed. The month's phone bill was over $400. His live-in girlfriend was also pissed because they had to leave the phone on and plugged into a charger to let it process the messages from my mass messaging campaign the night before. The notifications made the phone unusable, and they were stuck listening to the notification sounds for those 10 days. They tried stuffing it inside of a blanket, but the phone would get way too hot, and they were worried it would catch on fire. On the counter, plugged into an outlet, that's where it sat, keeping them awake and annoyed constantly. Another 2 months roll past, and I finally decide that he could have his microphone back. Kind of. I took it out of hiding and I stuffed it in his keyboard box that was also stored at my parents' house. He found it there not too long after, and he never even apologized for what he did. Not that I ever expected him to, because he's entitled. He even bragged about finally finding it. He never went into my room again without my permission, out of fear of his phone being locked up again. What an absolutely brilliant way to get back at the brother. And seriously, parents need to do better 1000%. Like, why in the world would you not punish your child for ransacking and destroying your other child's room? Like, I get that he's an adult dad, but damn, a whole room turned upside down, flipped inside out with no consequences. I almost feel like OP should have done the same thing to dad too, teach him a lesson as well. So not too long ago, I, a 23-year-old male, got into a huge fight with my parents and sister. They were angry at me for regularly eating in a hospital cafeteria because it's close to my work. I enjoy the peace and quiet there on the days I do show up to eat. But this situation escalated so radically that I can't believe something so dumb actually happened. My sister, the most entitled person I know, did the most petty thing she's ever done to me, and for completely undeserved reasons too, all because I wouldn't listen to what she said. When my sister found out that I was eating at the hospital cafeteria, she went off on me, how that food is just for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. We end up having a big argument about it, in which I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of the patients. That's when she went to our parents to get them on her side like always. They immediately sided with her just like I thought they would. And they backed her up on how the hospital cafeteria was not a place to go eating casually, and we had a big argument. They spent days hounding me and telling me I was wrong, demanding I stop. So I went to Reddit. And here I learned that not only was I doing nothing wrong, but it's also very common for people to go eat at hospital cafeterias just because they like it. I hoped the situation would just fade away. But a few days later, my sister called me, asking if I had stopped eating at the hospital. Now I didn't want to lie, so I said no, and then it starts all over again. My parents then spam called me, fuming, acting like I was supposed to stop going because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore, and this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side in almost everything. They huffed and puffed about it. But this time, the fight did not stay at home though. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her support. She was so dead set on enforcing her will upon me that she went looking for help from other relatives by taking it to Facebook and making a post about it. But our parents were the only ones on her side. My uncle actually told off my parents and her over the phone once I told him what actually happened. He told them that they were only siding with my sister because she's their favorite, and that they're terrible parents for ever playing favorites to begin with. Once outed, my parents backed down due to embarrassment. They actually apologized to me, and they gave me some malarkey that they honestly thought that eating at a hospital was weird, and that they felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they've been placating my sister for so long that it's all they ever do once she starts something with anyone, that she's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just keep enabling that. I told my parents that I won't put up with it anymore. My parents end up conceding and apologized, and then they made my sister apologize to me too. And I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invite me to dinner as another form of apology, but it felt more like a show to look good for the rest of the family because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great, I can't deny. My parents had cooked a turkey, which is arguably one of my favorite things to eat. We were all having a decent time, so I thought nothing of why my sister was so giggly at dinner. Later on, after the family dinner, I noticed that my bike was missing. I had parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was gone. I of course freak out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents did panic a bit with me, but my sister just seemed fine. She actually looked happy and she was still giggling. So I immediately suspect her and she played innocent. She even gave the "I can't believe you'd think I'd do something like that" line. Now, I already knew that she's extremely petty when she doesn't get her way, but this was a whole new level of it for her. So I said that I was gonna go to the neighbors because I know they have cameras and they'd have seen what happened, and then I would call the cops. Hearing me utter the word cop, my sister suddenly looks panicked and actually got mad at me for even threatening her with police. I said I knew it was her and then demanded my bike back. She then starts crying, saying she didn't do anything, and our parents were immediately taking her side while scolding me for daring to accuse her. They all ganged up on me again, so I had enough, and I said I'm going to the neighbors to ask to check their cameras, and then I'd be calling the police. My sister finally fessed up and she called me to come back, and the looks on our parents' faces after they defended her was priceless. My sister said that she was just so angry at me for having her apologize, so she planned to have a couple of her friends come and grab my bike during dinner. She said that her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then starts saying that regardless of what happened, I can't call police on her anyway because I'm her big brother and family doesn't do that. Of course, our parents backed her up on that too, asking me why I would call the cops on my own sister. But I pulled out my phone and I start marching outside again. They ran after me, with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat and then told my parents I can't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. It's at this point our parents finally hit their enabling limit with her, and they told her to make her friends bring my bike back immediately. She then gets on the phone while sniffling and she calls her friends up. But then she suddenly runs into her room to talk to them. I couldn't hear a thing she said through the door because it was all whispers, and our parents looked very worried too. My sister just kept sobbing that it was only a prank over and over again. She also kept using the excuse that my bike was dirty, old, and cheap anyways. But it's not cheap. My bike was a few $100s and I bought it used some months ago. Brand new, it's over $1,000. It's my main mode of transportation, and my sister just kept looking at my parents to back her up. And that time, they just couldn't. So my sister slumps down in a chair, hugging her knees and waiting with the rest of us. My sister looked increasingly freaked out the longer her friends took to bring my bike back, and she was repeatedly texting them. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them roughly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pull up in the minivan with my bike shoved in the back, and it was completely soaked and muddy, like it had just been pulled out of a wet, muddy ditch. The girls were so small that I can't picture them riding it at all. They then both begged me not to report them to police for taking the bike. I asked while recording them to tell me the truth, and then pointed out that the neighbors have cameras. Did my sister want them to get rid of my bike? It's at that moment they broke down and they said yes. My sister wanted them to take the bike and dump it into a pond a few miles away, and they had to go back and get it when they realized they were caught. My bike had been in the pond, completely submerged in muddy water. Thankfully, I didn't have many added accessories on it other than this detachable headlight and my water bottle, but the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what my sister's friends told me, and I had them tell our parents too. They laid into my sister until she was bawling on the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler. I had never seen my sister act that way since she was actually a toddler, and I found it mortifying that she was still like this on the inside. My sister then shut herself in her room, and her friends were banned from ever coming to my parents' house again. My sister was then forced to come out of her room by her mother to make another big apology to me. Dad then forced her to wash and oil my bike from stem to stern under his supervision. By the time my sister was done, it was dark outside. She glared at me like I was the devil when she came back inside the house. But our parents just shut her attitude right down, and they said they've never been more embarrassed by her in their lives. She went back to crying in her room. I had a very frank discussion with my parents about my sister's childlike behavior and how it stems from their spoiling and enabling. I said that I couldn't believe that I had to be the voice of reason, but the fact that she was on the floor crying like a toddler, kicking and pounding, showed that she's still mentally a child because of them. And they kept making me the scapegoat when she screwed up, so she barely knows any sense of accountability. For once, they didn't argue with me about it. And then my father just silently drove me and my bike back to my apartment with his SUV. He also gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle before we parted. My sister and her crew of friends harassed me a fair bit after that. After the bike incident, I got sent so many messages from random numbers just cussing me out for making my sister cry over a silly prank. Knowing her, my sister probably fed everyone she knew a very different story on what happened. I texted lengthy replies of what actually happened, and even stated that I have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some of my sister's friends found out what actually went down, maybe from my texts, or maybe her friends spilled the beans. But it embarrassed my sister so much that she came home having a crying tantrum. My sister ends up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days to have her pity party. My parents did call me up to try to turn everything on me again, but I reminded them about the discussion we had days before, and that they need to stop babying her and let her deal with the repercussions of her own actions. They sounded defeated and then apologized before ending the call. Unfreaking believable, guys, some people. And to think all of this happened because OP ate at a hospital cafeteria and his sister didn't approve of it. Like, get a life. That is some straight out unhinged behavior. Like stealing and dumping a bike, all because, again, OP ate at a hospital. That had nothing to do with her. Like, the cost of food wasn't coming out of her own pocket, so why? And OP's parents, the fact that they always side with sister, even though she's made ridiculous demands like this, is absurd. In my opinion, it's time to go super low contact, or even no contact. Because people like this in your life, it's just draining, right? Like, who needs enemies when you have family members like that? And this person shares a comment. Let me know if you agree or disagree. This person says, parents that have a golden child need to have some common sense slapped into them. Because golden children are some of the worst behaved people out there because the parents never told them no and enabled their horrible behavior. By the time the golden child realizes that their actions have consequences, it's way too late. So I'm a 39-year-old female, and I'm successful and quite well off. My siblings, sadly, are not. My brother, who's 42 years old, has 3 kids. My sister, who's 35 years old, also has 3, with 1 on the way. My youngest sister is 28 years old, and she's married and pregnant, but she has nothing to do with the events of this post. That said, we were all raised to believe that money doesn't matter, and all you need is a happy marriage and a lot of kids to live a happy life. Being poor and having lots of kids was somehow glorified. Maybe because that's the way our parents lived and wanted to convince themselves that they didn't F up. Fortunately for me, I didn't buy into that nonsense. I always knew I never wanted kids. I focused on my career and on achieving success. Today, I have my own house, wonderful pets, and a loving boyfriend. My family, however, seems to think that there's something wrong with my lifestyle. My parents have often commented that my 5-bedroom house is empty and unnecessary, without any kids running around. My siblings often tell me that I'm selfish for not having kids and actually enjoying my life. However, their disdain for my selfish lifestyle does not stop them from begging for money. My brother and sister have called me and asked me to help pay their bills. Now, if it's something serious, like clothes or school supplies for their kids, I'm willing to pitch in, but I always refuse when I'm asked to pay for trips to amusement parks, mini vacations out of state, etc. I also paid for my parents to stay in a high-end assisted living facility. They're my parents, and I felt that I owed them this much. However, I can't help but to feel insulted when they sing praises for my siblings for breeding and following in their footsteps, and how my parents had wished I had done the same. It's as if, among all of their kids, I'm the biggest disappointment. For this reason, I've distanced myself from them. I only call or visit to check up on them, and I don't let them be a part of my life. That said, the other day, I get this call from my sister, asking if she, her husband, my brother, and his wife could come over. I said okay. So they all came over, and that's when they asked me to leave my fortune to their kids, in equal portions, and if I did, they would stop asking me for financial help. Now, they said this as if they were doing me a favor, and my brother actually said, "You don't have kids, so who are you going to leave it to?" I told them that I was going to leave my money to charities and that I don't owe them a thing. When they went on the "you're selfish" tirade, I told them to get lost. The next morning, I get a call from my dad telling me that they were so disappointed in me. I simply just hung up. The one family member who has stood by me is my youngest sister. She actually has her crap together, and I could not be more proud of her. My goodness, money truly brings out the worst in people, doesn't it? Like, Opie's only 40 years old, and she's being bombarded with, when you die, leave us this, leave us that, give our kids equal shares, and we'll never ask you for money again. Like, you can all F right off, right? Like, some family that is. And to top it all off, the nerve of mom and dad to call Opie after asking "how dare you" is ridiculous. In my opinion, after everything that just happened, Opie should definitely have a will written out, leaving all of her family members out of it. And guys, this happens so much. This person comments, "My own sister just told her kids that when my husband and I die, we're leaving everything to them because we don't have kids." The first thing is, she didn't even think about my husband having nieces and a nephew. The second thing is she didn't talk to us about this. So no, we're not leaving anything to her kids. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode, another one, where bad bosses are getting absolutely destroyed by their employees. Guys, I'm gonna link it right here. If you missed it, go check it out. And me and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.